Welcome to the Career Slay podcast, the show where we interview people who love their jobs and discuss career growth, fearless leadership, and creating a life you love. I'm your host, Kelly Poquiz Burke, a marketer turned executive coach, and I'm here to help you lead with courage and slay the fear in career. If you're a fan of these conversations and want to dive deeper into your own career and leadership questions, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com. For more than 20 years, Jenny Parrish has been deep in the world of marketing and customer acquisition, guiding brands through smart, scalable growth. As Vice President of Sales at Division D, she leads with a data-driven, customer-first approach and a passion for building what's next. Jenny is also a speaker, editorial contributor, and dedicated mentor with leadership roles in industry women's councils. A California native and proud mom of two, she combines sharp strategy with grounded leadership in everything she does. Welcome to Career Slay, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. We met back in 2022 at a conference and we just jived. Yeah. And I was like, you have the most amazing career story and energy. So I'm so excited for you to tell your story here on Career Slay. So let's dive in. Would love to hear, what were you like as a child and what was the beginning of your story?
Yeah, sure. So, my childhood was as challenging as it was beautiful. My mom immigrated here from El Salvador, and it was a very difficult time. This was in the early 80s, late 70s, where she had to flee the country in a very stressed situation with my brother and sister. So the first place that she laid her head to rest in this country was a homeless shelter. I was actually born and raised here in Southern California, and so I came along a little bit later after she had come to the country. And we had very, very humble beginnings. She was doing night school, and she was also working at a hotel, a nice high-end hotel that she was actually cleaning rooms there for. We found an old paycheck years ago. She was making $3.75 an hour, supporting 3 kids. And she really was and still is my hero. But, she was really that example that honestly set the foundation for my entire life. Through the adversities, I really learned how it is to be disciplined, to really have your purpose. And she did everything really for us. And so it defined myself as a person that wants to do something more than just for myself. And so she was really fantastic at teaching us that. And so my older brother was the man of the family. And we all kind of learned very young that, there are certain things and luxuries that we just didn't even think that we needed to have or even presented to us. Christmas time, holidays, there was one present under the tree for the 3 of us. But we were fortunate enough that my mom worked very, very hard to move up the corporate ladder. She ended up the regional HR director for Intercontinental Hotels, got numerous awards for best of the best. And I think the best part about my childhood was probably visiting the hotels that she would be working at. And so many people would come up to me and be like, your mom has changed my life. Wow. She has been such an impact on my life. And she has really been that person that so many have turned to in their darkest hours. And so for her to be that rock for others when she was our rock going through so many different trials and tribulations, it just is a testament to her will and her strength.
That's an incredible story and so powerful. How did your mom's work ethic impact your life?
It made me start a very early career, or actually, I guess my first job. I was 14 years old. I worked for a salon as a receptionist, and it was just the greatest thing to me that I could have my own spending money, and something that I actually took a lot of pride in, that I was able to have this position and have my extra little cash that I was able to buy little things that I never got to do before. So it started my career very early, I guess, and working life. And I had a very interesting transition into kind of a broader career. At 18 years old, I was up for a position with a company called DaVita. third largest dialysis provider in the world, very large company. And it was a very highly competitive position that I actually found just from a posting. I later found out there was about 450 candidates up for the position. And I got the job at 18. So I actually passed on the path of kind of that traditional college path. Mm-hmm. So I was assisting the head of dietitians and also the pharmaceutical director. And my sister had actually transitioned from a career in banking to a very small boutique marketing agency. And she's like, I want you to join me. And everybody's like, are you crazy? This internet thing isn't going to last. This is a fad. It's funny to think about how the perception of the internet was back in the day, but this is about 2000. So this is post, bubble burst. So there was kind of this negative feeling towards tech and internet, and they really thought it was kind of shaking grounds. And here's this incredible position that I was in, and it was very stable. And I realized that the healthcare industry just wasn't for me. So it was a tiny boutique agency, but she's like, why don't we just start you as the accounts receivable clerk? And my sister was the head of accounting at that point. And so I was basically her assistant. And so the CEO at that time saw how bullish I was at acquiring our receivables, that he's like, you really should try your hand at sales. And funny enough, I was like, ew, I don't want to do sales. That sounds awful. I don't want to sell anything. I'm not that type of personality. And he's like, you got to look at it a little bit different. You're not necessarily having to sell. Think about it as you're problem solving. So fast forward, I was there about 9 months, and our tiny agency was actually acquired by a publicly traded organization at that point called ValueClick. Okay, But we went from 10, 15 of us to over 2,000 employees. So that transition was really pivotal for me because it kind of thrusted me into the corporate environment, and it also allowed me access into a different type of brand, clientele. I was primarily responsible for our affiliate marketing distribution side of things, and also the affiliate programs around our in-house brands. I was responsible for acquiring partnerships through different brands that we wanted to feature on our websites. And that's where I really found the love for sales, and particularly working with some of the largest organizations and brands in the world. Mm-hmm. It gave me a bit of a high, if I can be honest with you, because if I could make an impact for a company that has all the resources in the world, I feel like it gave me validation that I was able to do something impactful with my time and with my energy and with my creative process. And it allowed me a lot of freedom to start to define exactly the type of career I wanted. And then the time came where the founders of the organization that originally sold their company said, hey, we've hit our requirements as far as, needing to stay here. And we want to start a new organization that is different than what we're doing today. And so we started an email marketing agency, and that was really the core of what we did.
And this was before email marketing was really widely adopted by brands. So you were at the cusp.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was very early on. And, we were wildly successful. We went from 10 million to 100 million in quick order. It took just a couple of years for us to really grow that trajectory overall. And my role specifically was to bring in the clients that we were going to distribute through our email marketing efforts. And I was fortunate enough to be highly impactful to the point that they offered me partnership. And so I ended up being a partner of that agency and earning equity. And
how old were you at this time?
26.
Holy moly. That's incredible.
So I was, one, the only female partner, two, certainly the youngest, and three, I feel like I lived and breathed that organization. I ended up being there 15 years, but one thing I really want to point out is that in that process, I think the most valuable thing that I learned was actually going through raising capital. Mm-hmm. I think that we don't discuss enough how important it is for anybody to kind of take part of those things, because it was such a learning experience. I, foregoed going to a university, college, traditional education. And so my education was actually my work environment.
Mm-hmm. You went to actual business school.
Exactly. Yes, the business was my school.
Yes.
And I learned so much. I mean, I was in the room, with private equity firms, discussing how to position the company, VCs, understanding all the differences of how to raise capital and really what to do with that capital. And so we were highly successful in raising $70 million in capital. We went through an acquisition of another organization. And what happened with that transition was I was able to envelop an entirely new team. And we essentially went global overnight. That particular organization was a strategic play for us because we immediately had presence in locations like Hong Kong and Canada and the UK. And so all of a sudden we had this presence globally, and it just made our reach significantly further. And so, with that, I was working harder than I ever could. I actually even personally at that point made the decision to not start a family, even though I had gotten married at 21. My husband and I didn't decide to have children until 10 years into our marriage. And that was primarily because of my career. I poured everything possible into this. And so I think that, one of the challenges that came upon my career and my life, it was it's almost like surreal when this type of things happen to you. But my brother, and kind of going back to my origin story, right? You think about us that it was the four of us for so long. He was the man of our family, and our self-proclaimed golden child, because my brother was really exceptional as a person. Just skipped the 9th grade, one of the youngest, most successful at Merrill Lynch, owned 10 businesses. He was larger than life, and he was gone overnight. It's kind of an infamous story at this point. He was in a car accident with the actor from the Fast and the Furious franchise, Paul Walker, which was honestly such a lovely human too. The warmth behind him and any interactions I ever had with him, he was fantastic as a person. And my brother was gone. And so to see his face on TMZ and news outlets and being a global headline was beyond. It was so many people saying, oh, they're only talking about Paul. What about Roger? And people wanted to actually throw him more into the limelight. And I'm like, no, I wanted to run from that as much as possible. I'm like, we wanted to grieve privately and quietly. And from a work environment, people were telling me, hey, there's, everybody is crowded around. Of course, at that point, I took some time off.
Yeah.
And everybody's crowded around a monitor, and they're all reading the headlines about your brother right now. And I'm just like, I didn't really know how to react to that. But I know in that moment, it was such just a shift in my entire world, because again, I had gone from prioritizing my career to the point that I wasn't going to have kids. I'm running, this global enterprise, and I was highly responsible for the majority of our revenue that was flowing through the organization, and it stopped on a dime, because at that point, not only had I lost my brother, but my mom, that I care so deeply about, has lost her son.
Yeah.
And so the dynamics of my world just completely fell apart. And grief is incredibly overwhelming, especially with the circumstances that I had, where it was just everywhere and everybody knew about it. And it was something that I really didn't like. I didn't like the publicity behind it. And there was so many conspiracy theories and blame going on at that time. And, all I could think about is kind of the inventory of my losses. And, I was fortunate enough to get grief therapy, which I highly recommend for anybody going through, a difficult time or a difficult loss like this. But to go through my inventory of like, I've lost my brother, I've lost that father figure, And I've lost my financial advisor, and I've lost my go-to guy when it came to my mom. And I know that sounds unusual, but like no matter what, my mom would always listen to my brother.
Yeah.
He was just that guy. He was that person that everybody loved and trusted. And my mom was so incredibly close to him. It was like an out-of-body experience. And even the funeral and everything. And I remember that I had to be responsible for the music and putting together the slideshow for his funeral. It's just so many things that you don't even think about or you don't plan for. And you're thrown in this position. And so like all of a sudden, you're thinking about, taking over the world and knowing marketing and advertising better than anyone in the room. And then all of a sudden, none of it mattered.
Yeah.
None of it mattered. It was just a complete wipeout of my life in that particular window.
When things like that happen, when these curveballs and crises happen, I say it creates this moment of realizing what's truly urgent and important in life, right? I can't even imagine. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. And thank you for being so vulnerable and for sharing that story, because I think it's important for people to realize that everyone has something that they're going through. We, brainwash ourselves to get on the hamster wheel and to be so focused on climbing the corporate ladder and building our careers. And we think that that's the priority. But then when life happens, our priorities shift. So what happened to your career after that experience?
I took about a month off, and it was still very difficult. And I kind of just tried to pick up things as I, left them. And that was really challenging. Mm-hmm. So honestly, I just started to pick up the pieces of my life, but it mentally and emotionally shifted me. And honestly, my passion died a little bit with that experience where it wasn't my sole focus. And I started to think about what else should I be really thinking about? What else? How else can I really put my life in a different purpose than just what I'm doing here at work? And so I actually got pregnant not very long after that. Mm-hmm. It shifted, I think, my emotional well-being to a positive point, to where I realigned myself in regards to kind of how to move forward in my career, how to move forward in my life. Grief therapy certainly helped tremendously for me to be able to pick up those pieces and really be able to get back to it. And so work was a great distraction when I needed it. But it definitely dimmed my ability to pour 150% like I always have into it. Mm-hmm. And so I was pregnant at that point, and it was wonderful to be there, to be present, and not think about, revenue and what's the next brand that we're going to be scaling and how are we going to, take over the next market. And so it was a really wonderful experience. And so the next couple of years, it was really about growing that infrastructure, intertwining that global presence and that acquisition into our company. And then I actually got pregnant again with my son. So fast forward, I basically was able to get my rhythm back. And then I got pregnant with my second child. This was then leading up to the second biggest challenge of my life and my career, where there was a decision to essentially dissolve the partnerships that were associated with the organization. And so while it was fantastical to think about a windfall and cashing that equity out and moving forward in a different direction, I felt like I lost my entire identity that I have known for the past 15 years at this organization in a blink. I took a couple months off after that point just to kind of recalibrate, like, where do I want to go next? What do I want to do? And so I ended up going towards a direction of like understanding different media outlets. I wanted to really understand, how the other elements of media that I've interacted with but never really knew about, really worked and how that impacted advertising and clients and brands. And so I ended up going to a place that really had strong connections with programmatic display, native advertising, social media advertising. And I learned so much there. And I think that it's really important for someone like me that didn't go through that formal education process that I do have that opportunity to continue learning. And so over the next couple of years, I really focused on just learning different avenues of the business. It was fun to just kind of see the different dynamics of potentially what a brand is going through and how that they're defining that identity and really trying to cultivate something from nothing into, really a grassroots effort to get the brand off the ground. And so it was an incredible journey. And then I ended up in a completely different place and in a completely different arena. I was poached by a friend of mine that I've known for the majority of my life. And they said, hey, we want you to head up this programmatic exchange for phone calls. And I know that sounds really unusual, and it kind of is. It's basically the automation of how two different sides connect. A DSP or demand side platform is really where you're going to be able to access multiple places of getting distribution. So if you think about back in the day when I started, you had to go to a website and say, hey, I have a banner and I have an advertisement and I'd like you to put it on that website. And that's how we did it back in the day. But then there were, this evolution of how we are buying media where you're now being able to start to put your advertisements in places that you're going to have a definitive idea of the audience that is going to see your advertisement and also reach it in a mass way, right? You're being able to display across multiple websites at the same time. And it's typically an auction model, right? So whatever you're bidding on for that impression, that's essentially how you get your advertisement on these particular websites or different placements. And now programmatic has evolved to include things like connected television, digital outdoor. And so there are a lot of kind of growth behind programmatic these days. So I transitioned to something that was completely new, which was this programmatic exchange for phone calls. And if you think about live phone calls, a lot of people are like, who picks up the phone these days, right?
Spam likely.
I know. You're like, I don't want to talk to you. But if you think about it, when you're needing to call someone, so, think about when you need a mortgage, when you need a plumber, when you need anything to do with home services, sensitive information, a lawyer. It's really about those major purchases or those urgent purchases that you end up picking up the phone. And so, we created this environment that we were basically the catalyst for being able to buy calls in a live inbound environment. And so it was like a startup all over again. So it was going back to my old roots where it felt like it was the 10 of us. Even though the organization was bigger and they had core competencies in other technologies, my particular division was very much startup feel. It drove me back towards what I think I enjoyed most, which was controlling media and distribution. And that kind of takes me to where I am today, which is Division D, incredible organization, and one that is actually an entirely female C-suite, which is very rare.
Yes.
I know. It was definitely a draw. And so in a programmatic environment, you're really kind of depending on others to get distribution to your advertising customers, right? And when I decided to take this position with Division D, I really was excited about knowing that 85% of the staff controlled our media in-house, and we touched all the media channels that I have now learned throughout my career, right? So we're touching everything from email marketing to programmatic display, CTV. And what's been most exciting for me is learning a completely new media channel, which is influencer marketing.
Oh,
and,
cool. Yes.
And of course, I know what influencers are. I know what content creators are, but I hadn't actually interacted with that world until I started with my position at Division D. And when I see companies like Unilever that are now dedicating 50% of their marketing spend towards influencer marketing, I'm like, okay, this is where I need to be.
Well, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
So what is your position at Division D? What do you do in your role?
Yeah, sure. So officially Vice President of Sales. I am responsible for essentially launching our enterprise division. I am focused on really those household brands, emerging companies, the public sector. And so it is really my responsibility to acquire those different customers that are looking for agency services, that are looking for influencer impact, and different elements of what we do, and putting that expertise behind it. I love working with some of the largest organizations in the world. I always say that you can put me in a room with anyone, the biggest company, the C-suite, and it's something that I'll never back down from. I enjoy having the conversations with really accomplished and advanced executives. I think it's something that continues to fuel my growth too, to be around in that environment of some of the greatest brand leaders in our industry. And I always say I work for the brand as much as I work for Division D. I think it's what's helped me be successful throughout my career is as I've always poured myself into my work, I pour myself into being as successful as possible on behalf of the brands that I represent.
Yeah, it goes back to the beginning of your career where it was that shift from selling to problem solving and solving problems for these clients. And I mean, as a former client, like I have so many problems to solve, so please solve all my problems. I want to ask you about influencer marketing because that is something that is so hot right now. I mean, influencers have been around since having athletes on Wheaties boxes. But what do you see for the future of influencer marketing?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that brands are going to find alignment with influencers because there's a lot of authenticity behind them, right? They have cultivated an audience that is specific to their niche, right? And I think that it's a different voice, in a way that you see ads everywhere. It's kind of like eating a lemon, right? It's a little bit sour. People are sour on ads. But when you put it through the lens of an influencer, it feels like there's a little sugar on that lemon. It's a little bit more digestible, a little bit sweeter. And I think that there's a trust factor that is created there. And that's why I think that there's a lot behind the growth of influencers. I think that you're going to see the industry start to shift towards more of a micro influencer, actually. So I think when you traditionally think of content creators, you think of, Mr. Beast and, huge celebrities, but there are certain times where sometimes that celebrity can actually eclipse the brand and the messaging. So I actually think that micro and mid-level type of influencer is going to be those that are making potentially the largest impact for brands these days and, kind of moving forward.
Yeah. What I love about influencers, I love and I hate them because
I get it.
I'll just leave it at that. But they operate at the bottom of the funnel.
Exactly.
So it's like where that loyalty piece is like, I know you and I trust you because I've been following your content. So I feel like we're friends.
Yes.
If you sell me something, I don't feel as bad about it because, well, I kind of want to be like you,
Exactly.
And so there's this like element of maybe it's not going to be your most efficient channel, but it is going to be your most loyal channel. And it is like down closer into the sale. It's closer into the revenue generating tactic. So
I totally agree.
So what is the most fulfilling part of your job today? And how does purpose play into your overarching, point of view on your career?
Yeah, I think from a professional standpoint, the biggest kind of driver to what I do and how I've recreated my passion is honestly starting to build something that isn't there. That's kind of been the common theme throughout my career, right? Where it's either been a small organization or a new initiative or taking over new markets. This particular, I guess, opportunity has really created something where it's given me a new purpose to deliver and to create something that wasn't there. You're essentially creating business out of thin air, and maybe there's an element of magic to that I'm drawn to. But the purpose of really being able to move and scale a business that's been established. Division D has been around for 23 years. And if I can make an impact as an individual to kind of move them into the next chapter, it makes me thrive as a human being. It's just something that I really enjoy. But at the core of it, and through all my trials and tribulations and challenges and everything that I've learned, I think that at the end of the day, my purpose is my family, my kids, my husband. It's why I do everything that I do, and finding that balance is always a challenge as a working mom. Making sure I'm not traveling too much and that I'm there for the recitals and volunteering at the school when I can, and being a part of their lives is definitely my priority and why I do what I do. I work so hard because honestly, it goes back to my mom, right? I saw my mom pouring everything into her life to make it ours, to really create that environment for us. And so I certainly have taken a page out of her playbook, and that has created my deepest purpose, is to be there for my family, to provide for my family. I don't know if I could have a greater purpose than that, is to serve them.
That's so beautiful because it really realigns the fact that, work should be a part of our life, but it's not our whole life.
Yes.
And everything that you've been through, your incredible origin story, the challenges with your brother's death, the grief, and moving through your entire career, it feels like you have always had that foundation and that strong core. And all of these things were kind of a reminder of drawing you back to that ultimate purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so well said. It really is, whether it's my immediate family, from my kids and my husband, to, my extended family, like my sister and my mom and my stepdad. It just kind of all boils down to, at the end of the day, that's what really counts. That's what's important. Being present is something that I am constantly trying to be better at. Putting down the phone when I walk in through the door, making sure that my time with them is their time. And this is our time for us to be together and to put the work away and to shift away from that particular gear, because it's easy for me to get caught up. I love to be successful and I want to perform, and I'm a bit of an overachiever, and I've kind of always been. But at the same time, as you go through life, you start to figure out, like, this is really what is important. This is what is going to matter at the end of the day. And I will never, look back on my deathbed and say, I wish I worked more.
Absolutely. And it's about aligning with your priorities so work can support the rest.
Exactly.
What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
I would tell my 20-year-old self that don't turn your back on the mistakes and the pitfalls and the stumbles that you've had. Don't be so hard on yourself, because I think that as I look back at every bad decision I may have made, or the mistakes that I've made, it really defined me and allowed me to grow. That's how we have those growth opportunities. You're going to not be perfect. It's never going to be a straight line, but embrace it, because that's what's going to make you stronger. That's what's going to make you better. And every opportunity that you have that's a learning experience, it's really a gift.
Wow, that's so beautiful. There's so much there. If you had to sum up your career in 3 words, what would those be?
Oh boy. Resilient, innovative, and collaborative. Resilience, I think, is pretty evident after hearing my story, and something I definitely take from my mom. Innovation, because I started what feels like in the beginning of the internet. And so having those moments where I've been able to be creative and think outside the box, it's always been a part of my journey. And collaboration. I always tell this story because it's actually a funny compliment that someone on my team said to me. She said, "Jenny, you don't act like a VP." And I said, "Oh, I don't know how to take that." And she goes, "Because you're right here with us. you're right alongside us, making sure that we have you as a guide and as a mentor, but also like on the battlefield with them. And so collaboration, I think, has made me successful, and it's been a pillar of my entire career. Absolutely.
What an amazing compliment. And I know exactly what she means, because you have such a just warm and collaborative energy. And gosh, what a pleasure it is to know you and to have worked with you. And I'm just so excited about telling your story.
Thank you so much, Kelly. This has been a wonderful experience. Thank you for the opportunity. And this has been wonderful. Thank you.
The Career Slay podcast is a co-production of Career Slay and Weld Reply. This episode was produced by Asia Lane and Michael Burke, with editing by Michael Burke. If you like the show, subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're ready to level up, pivot, or lead with confidence, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com.